Hi guys, in this video I'm going to show you how to disassemble and rebuild a front caliper from an Alfa Romeo 159. So the first thing we're going to do is separate the caliper itself from the carrier bracket here, and we do that by taking out the two hex 7 bolts that are behind these little covers here. Just whip them off. There we go. So you'll need something a bit like that. This should now come away from the carrier. Now that can just go to one side. And now the next job is going to be to get this piston out of here, which we're going to do with compressed air. There are other ways of doing it, grease gun, etc., but the air compressor is probably the fastest and most effective way of getting it out. So we'll see how that goes. Okay, should be ready to try and get the piston out now. Now you'll notice I have put a brake pad there, because when you put compressed air behind these things, they come out like a bag curry, and you really don't want it flying across your workshop or onto your fingers, because it hurts like billy-o. So I'm going to run some air through it now, and we'll see if it will give us any trouble. There we go. It's a fairly easy one. So that should just come out the boot like that. Oh, quite a bit of brake fluid there. Good job I've got gloves on. That can go to one side. We'll be replacing that with a new one. And now you should just be left with this here. Now this is just the dust boot. That should just come off. Maybe with a bit of persuasion. Right, so once you've got your piston out, you want to remove the boot. Now this one did give me quite a bit of trouble actually, because the metal ring itself had sort of fused around this housing here, which made it a bit tricky to get out, but yeah, you can probably see by what's left. And in there you should be able to see the internal seal that holds all the fluid in. You don't need anything special to get that out. I'm just going to use a very fine screwdriver. There you go, and that should come out quite easily. We've got the internal seal out. All we need to take off now are these. They're just the rubber bushes. We're going to replace those in the rebuild so they can go in the skip. We are also going to take the bleed valve off the caliper as well, and I will be using a flare spanner for that, because these are a lot more reliable than using just normal open end spanners, and you're at far less risk of rounding the nut off. There we go. There we go, one caliper disassembled. I'm going to run the caliper and the bracket through my sandblaster and then powder coat them, and then we'll start putting everything back together. Right, so all the parts are now out of the sandblaster and I've powder coated them, and I think they've turned out alright. And this is what you're going to need to do the rebuild. So in the kit you should get a new dust boot, a new piston. You don't have to replace these, but I like doing it. New internal seal, 2 new guide pins, 2 new guide bushes, the end caps, a new bleed valve cover, and some silicone lube just to help stick it all together. And it's just same as before, H7 hex bit and a caliper rewind tool, which I'm going to use to put the new piston back in. So let's have a go. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is put the internal seal back in the bore there. Just going to give it a quick coat of this silicone grease. And this sits inside a little groove just inside the bore there. There you go. Just make sure that's properly seated. And now we can move on to the new piston. And the boot, or dust seal, whatever you want to call it. I'm going to put this over the piston first. Makes it a lot easier to get on. So it should look something a bit like that. It's a bit distorted, this one. I might have to get a new one. And what you want to do is get the dust seal nice and flat and seated all the way around, which I'll do off camera because it's a bit of can be a bit fiddly sometimes. And then we'll get on to winding the piston back in. Okay, the dust boot's now on. So I've got my caliper rewind tool in here. You don't have to use this, you can just use a pair of G clamps or whatever you've got hanging about. So we're just going to ease it back in, and as it's coming towards the top, you should see the top of the dust cover here indexed with the groove in the piston, which it has done. And then you just need to keep winding it back in until it's fully home. Okay, so we now have the piston in the fully home position, and now we can attach it back to the carrier. First things first though, we've just got to put these new guide pin bushes in. These can be a bit fiddly, so you might just have to bear with me. That's one. There we go. Got our nice new guide pins here. Give them a quick go over with the brake grease. Right, we'll just do those up. Go. Put the new end caps on. So there we go. One Alfa Romeo 159 front brake caliper, fully stripped and rebuilt. Ready to go back on the car.